I found that there is something that has happened in many places among believers who have come to understand the gospel. And I'm speaking here from my heart. This is not something that I expect, and I think most of us don't expect this, but I've found that many people, when they come to understand the gospel, their standard of Christian living deteriorates sometimes. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I've seen people who they embrace righteousness by faith, and you expect that when you become joined to Christ, your life is going to become more pure and upright and a greater model of moral living. I've found that many times it seems to work the opposite way. And I have wondered why, and I'm sure most of us have observed it, and you wonder why as well. I mean, that is one of the objections, one of the reasons that people have had for criticizing our message. They say that our message has not made people better. And of course, sometimes they are looking at externals. And I agree that sometimes this is superficial, but it's still notable. You know, a lot of people get into righteousness by faith, and the women, they don't dress as modestly anymore. And the men are not as careful about what they say, what they watch, the things, they tend to get a little loose. And I wondered about it because, in my opinion, when the gospel of Christ comes into your life, you know, my father used to say, the gospel makes a man into a gentleman. And, you know, I've always thought that this is the truth. But I have observed that practically sometimes it doesn't seem to work this way. Now, let me explain myself a little better. I agree that sometimes the things that we thought were most important when we were under the law, we discover we don't become so nitpicking anymore. There are certain little things that we used to be very, very finicky about, and we discover that they were really legalistic. You know, for example, I know that there are some Adventists who will not light a fire on the Sabbath. And you know, we have certain little rules like this that we think are purity and holiness, but they are really relics of legalism. So I know that when you come to understand the gospel as it is in Jesus, we come to have a better understanding of certain things. And so we move more based on the spiritual implications more than upon the legalistic form of the things that we do. I understand this. But I also can see that many times, well, maybe not many times, but I've seen that sometimes there is a deterioration. I've seen that, you know, as I said, women have been dressing less modestly. You know, sometimes, I mean, I see the dresses scraping the ground. I'm not suggesting this. As I say, people overdo things, but sometimes I've seen that they start to wear almost mini skirts, you know, and they start to expose themselves more, and they are not so concerned about the things that used to concern them, you know. So why does this happen? And I get a little feedback, so let me just mute everybody. I'm going to go to the Bible, and we're going to look at this question a little bit more closely. And let me share my screen now. Okay, I'm going to, before we actually begin to look at the Bible, let me share some ideas. I'm going to try to suggest some things to you that will probably explain a little bit why this tends to happen. Let me ask you, if what we are looking for in life, if what we are looking for out of Christianity is salvation, When do you obtain salvation? When I was under the law, I thought salvation is when Jesus comes and I have kept all the commandments. If I have lived well enough, then when Jesus comes, I will be saved. This is what I used to believe. What did the gospel teach me? The gospel taught me that when I have received Jesus Christ, I have salvation at that moment. Salvation is not something I'm looking for in the future. Salvation is something I already possess today. So, if I have salvation, why do I need to live a moral life? If what I'm looking for is salvation and I got it already, why do I need to live a life of denial, self-denial? Why do I need to put myself in uncomfortable positions and deny myself of things if what I'm looking for, I got it already? I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying this is my argument or this is my position. I'm trying to help us to see into the minds of people and to try to understand why certain things happen. If your goal is salvation and you got it already, if that is your motivation, you have no reason to keep on seeking. You have no reason to keep on living a pure, morally upright life because you got what you're after already. Now, you might say, no Christian should think like this. No Christian should hold these kinds of motives in his mind. But it is the truth that it is the reality of what has happened in many cases. It's kind of like you accept the gospel, but you are still under the law in reverse. Because when you were under the law, you were working for salvation. So you had a motivation to observe the law and to do all the little fine points that people say you should do. You had a motivation and you tried hard because you were seeking salvation. The gospel came and taught you that is not the way to salvation. It is a gift of God. You simply receive it. If you believe it, you receive it by faith. Bang, you got salvation. You rejoiced and you were happy, and your heart overflows because of what you got. Now, there's no motivation anymore to live this pure, holy life. Well, somebody says, I saw where somebody commented that, well, you can lose salvation. This is true. But then, if you understand that all you need to do is ask forgiveness, doesn't that cover that? Now, this is not my argument. I'm trying to get into the minds of people and the way they think. I'm trying to get into the reasons why, the psychological reasons that make certain things happen. I'm trying to understand the seeming contradiction that people accept Christ and their lives seem to grow worse. This is not the case with those who are in a certain relationship with Christ, but it is the case with many who claim to have accepted righteousness by faith. I hope everybody's understanding what I'm saying. And I want to look this morning at the root reasons for this. Now, let's go to John 14, verses 21 to 23. 21 and 23, not 21 to 23, 21 and 23 I want, okay? So I'm specifically zooming in on these couple of verses. Here Jesus says in verse 21, it's a very well-known verse, but I want to examine it a little more closely this morning. This is what he says. He that hath my commandments and keepeth them, he it is that loveth me. And he that loveth me shall be loved of my Father. And I will love him and will manifest myself to him. This verse has been burning my heart for about a week and a half. This one and the one in verse 23, it has been burning in my heart. Look here, look at this. I will manifest myself to him. There's nothing in this world that I desire more than this. There's nothing. What this phrase means, I will manifest myself to him. I will see Jesus. I will experience Jesus. All that Jesus means revealed, unfolded to me. Wow. This is one of the great promises in the Bible. I have 5 verses that I have written down. One of these days I'm going to go over them one by one. I have 5 verses that are special to me, and this is one of them. And it goes in hand with verse 23. Jesus answered and said unto him, if a man love me, he will keep my words, and my Father will love him, and we will come unto him and make our abode with him. There's a promise again. Goodness gracious. God and Jesus come unto me and make their home with me. Now, I know that Christ lives in us. I know that God lives in us. But, brothers and sisters, the problem is that we have the presence of Father and Son, and much of the time, this presence is not manifested unto us. This is a problem. It's like you have gold and you can't see it, and you can't spend it. Jesus says there are certain conditions in which I will manifest. You will see me, experience me, feel me, know me. You won't be reaching and groping in the dark. There is something else in this relationship other than just the desire for salvation. There's something more. The reason why Christians accept righteousness by faith and they fall into less holy living is because their goal is salvation. Their goal, salvation seems to be a wonderful thing and something that should be the motivation of everyone, but I put it to you that there is something greater. There is something greater. And if you have your eyes on the lesser thing, this is the result you will see in your life. Your life will degenerate after you have received salvation, because your motivation is gone because you have it already. It's like a man who chases a girl. She's beautiful and he loves her and he chases her. And when he has gotten her and she's married, in a year, he doesn't pay her any attention anymore. She's already his. I know how wives feel, because I get it from my wife sometimes. You know, women need the continual assurance that they are loved. Generally speaking, I'm not hitting at every woman, but most women in a marriage, they need the assurance that they are loved. And the man can't seem to understand, because he says, I married you. I spent all my time chasing you. And now I got you and you're mine. Why do I have to keep chasing you? Because I got what I was chasing already. Why do I need to keep doing this? But it's kind of like that, you know. People say, well, I was chasing Christ because I wanted salvation. Now I got Jesus and I got salvation. I can stop chasing. It's kind of like that. I'm not getting into the right or the wrongs of how men behave, but I just wanted to use the example to make sure that we understand. Now, Jesus says that the key is, if a man love me, if a man love me, he uses it twice, right? In verse 21, he says, he it is that loveth me. And in verse 23, he says, if a man love me. All right, let me just quickly focus in on these 2 words. I'd like us to look at these 2 definitions of love. Number 1, when we think about love, most of the time we focus on the first one, because we say that as Christians we should be selfless, and this is the nobler motive, right? To have a selfless concern for another person. This is God's type of love, we say. And that is true. Selfless concern for another person. But there's another aspect of love. Look at number 2. It's to desire a person. It's to want to be with a person. Do you want number 1 without number 2? If you focus only on number 1, you can have a distant relationship, right? I can care for my child. I can live overseas and I send money home. I'm concerned for this person. I don't even have to communicate. They say God so loved the world. Look here. That has nothing to do with whether I have a relationship with God. It's just God's attitude of selfless concern. God is love, so God so loved the world. That is love. But the other aspect of love is where you have a desire for a person. You want to be with a person. Which of these two turns you on? Which of these two burns your heart? Which of these two is Jesus speaking about? Let me go back to my Bible screen, but I'd like us all to really think about this, because these are sometimes the questions that we don't get into, but they are it's a very important question. It's a very important issue. Because it has to do with the question that we are looking at. I'm going to put it to you that we are looking at the second definition of love, a desire, a want for another person. This is what Jesus is focusing on. And if we miss this, the whole point of what he's saying in the passage, we're going to miss it. We're going to lose the impact of what he's saying. Now, Jesus says, he that hath my commandments. All right? And then further on, he says, he will keep my words. Look at these two things: commandments and words. All right. Let me go back to, I'm going to go back to my other screen in just a moment. But let me ask you to consider, how have we dealt with this? Well, traditionally, way back in the beginning of our legalism days, we said, the commandments, you must keep the 10 commandments. Okay? And for a long time, we believe this is what Jesus is saying. If you love me, you keep my commandments, and then you'll have a special relationship with me. Unfortunately, it never worked. You kept the commandments until you were blue in the face, and you never had that special relationship. Some of the biggest legalists, some of the people who least know the Lord, they are keepers of the commandments, or so they say. They observe the 10 commandments. Then we got to the place where we began to understand, hey, it's not the 10 commandments. Jesus' commandment is to love one another. So we started to say, well, what Jesus means here is that you are to keep my personal commandments, that you are to love one another, and anything else I said. So we start looking for his commandments in the Bible. I went through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John many years ago, maybe about nearly 30 years ago. I went through the Bible. I went through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and I looked for every commandment that Jesus gave. I think I found about 500 and something. I can't remember, but I think it might have been something about that. Instead of 10 commandments, I got 500 and something. I put myself in more trouble, because Jesus gave so many commandments. If you say the commandments of Jesus are not grievous, you just swapped 10 for 500 and something. I'm not going to hold myself to that. I don't remember how many I've found, but I've found a lot. Okay, and you can think of all the things he said in the Gospels, and you'll realize it's true. So I came to realize something as I was looking back over these verses recently, and I came to recognize that there's something about these verses that I want to emphasize. When we look at these verses, who is Jesus speaking to? Look at it carefully with me. It says, he, and down here it says, if a man. These are not instructions for the church. These are not standardized instructions. Let me use that word. Think about the word standardized. What is standardized? It means that you have a model that everybody goes by. You know, I say to my children, I want all of you to sweep the yard. That's for everybody. But I call one of them and I say, Daniel, I want you to wash the dishes. This is me and Daniel. This is not me and everybody. There is a difference when I'm dealing with you as a person as opposed to when I'm dealing with everybody in a standard way. Standard instructions can work for strangers, they can work for servants. But personal instructions are for people who are in a relationship. Jesus is speaking to he. Jesus is speaking to if a man. He's speaking to you as an individual. He's talking about your relationship with him. This is talking about personal interaction with the individual. It's not talking about the church or the group or the family. It's you and him. These two verses, that's why they burn my heart. I want to know that God, it's good to know that God so loved the world, but I want that love in me because I'm not the world. I'm not the world. I'm an individual. And it's good to know that he's a father of the church, but I need to know that he is my father. It's good to know that he's directing the church, okay, but I want to know that he's directing me because he's my daddy, he's my friend. And so Jesus says, and so I want to put it to you that there are three. Let me come back up with the other screen because I want to point out three things I want to emphasize. Um, all right. Look at this word. That brings to mind the commandments of the old covenant. This brings to mind the teachings of Jesus. What does this bring to mind? Is it different than the other two? Is the last one different? You have commandments, then you have words, and then you have voice. Which of these should we emphasize as we look at these passages and as we look at this relationship with Jesus? Which of these brings a relationship? As I said, his commandments are for Israel, they are for the world, they're even for the heathen who do by nature the things contained in the law. And what about words? Okay, his words come a little closer because you know he spoke those words. But where are those words? They are written in a book, they are on paper. They are still impersonal and they are still formal and they are still statements for the world. Where are my words? Where are the words for me? Where is my relationship and how do I build that relationship? What is Jesus talking about when he says, if a man love me, he will keep my words? And I think I see something more. Give me a second, my Bible went down. Why isn't it? Give me a second, brothers and sisters. I need to bring back my Bible. And it's giving me a little bit of a. All right, there we go. All right. The problem is,
Brother David,
yes, Sister Maria.
is a love a choice or a gift?
Please say that again.
Is a love a choice or a gift? Is it
Is
a choice
love
that we make or it's a gift? You hear
Well,
what I'm saying?
yes, I understand. I understand. I'm thinking about the question. I believe that love is, it's kind of like a choice, but I believe it's a response to the gospel.
Would it be a gift, David? Because when we get a child that's born, we just love them automatically. So it's got to be that kind of a gift.
Well, not everybody loves God, so that's why I have to think about it. Because the point is, why do we love Him? We love Him because we are able to discern. We love Him because He first loved us. This is what the Bible says. So, our
But it,
our our view of His love, our view of His love produces love in us. So it's
yes.
our response, but it's our response to the revelation of God. It's our response to His revelation. Therefore, we preach the gospel that men may see the love of God and the consequences that they love Him in return. So, is this a gift? It's a gift in the sense that God has opened up the way for this experience. He has done it for everybody in the world. In this sense, it's a gift. But in the sense that we respond, it's due to our response because not everybody responds to that gift. In this sense, it's our choice.
Right. That's right. Amen.
Thank you for that, Sam. All right.
Yeah, brother David. But the nature we have, we can't love with this nature. So wouldn't it be something that God has to change our nature in order to learn how to love?
This is why, brother Tony, I emphasize the two definitions of love at the beginning. Remember, one definition is
Right.
selfless concern.
Selfless.
You can't have this without God. But what about the second one? To desire and to want. Everybody has this. Even before you become a Christian, you desire life. Even before you become a Christian, you can learn to desire and to want somebody else. So this seems to be a capacity. This kind of love is a capacity that we all have. And this kind of love is something that we can choose. So this is why I made the distinction because I realized that there is an aspect of love that we can choose. That's why Jesus says, if a man loves me, if a man loves me, if he desires me and he wants me, there will be something that happens in his life. He will keep my words.
Right.
And I'm focusing now on what words.
Brother David,
Yes, Brother Sam.
that's why I was having problem when you said the Ten Commandments was also nailed to the cross because I believe the Ten Commandments is the commandments of love. I
All
always
right.
thought it did with love. And
All
I
right.
said, when we see that God gave his only begotten son to us, at least me, it caused me to see how much he loves me. And
Let,
it
let,
caused me to love him back.
let me get to the end of it, Brother Sam, so you can see if we're really on the same page. But I appreciate what you're saying. Um, and I didn't say the commandments were nailed to the cross. I said the ministry of the commandments. I don't think maybe that distinction is very clear in your mind, but there's a difference. And another time we're going to talk about it. I don't want to be distracted here now. But thank you for the comment. So there are two kinds of commandments and two kinds of words that can come to us. There can be the standardized commandments. You go into a store and I went into a store some time ago and I purchased a weed whacker, what do you call it? They might have different name, but it's that little machine they use to cut grass. And the guy gave me a piece of paper and told me, this will tell you how to operate it. But I wasn't satisfied and I started asking him questions. And then he took the time and he began to give me now more detailed instructions. And I just ignored what was in the book. I listened to him. He gave me some other ideas that were nowhere in the book. And these helped me to operate the machine even more effectively. This is not really the best illustration, but it kind of gives the idea. There is a difference when you get standardized instructions in a book as opposed to when a person is speaking to you. When a person is speaking to you, it's personal. When I get on here on this platform, I say good evening to everybody. Then I say, hi, Brother Joshua, hi, Brother David, Sister Leanne, Brother George, Sister Nina, Sister Carla, Justin, John. I mention certain people by name. That is those that I can see. And immediately when I mention you by name, there is something different. There's a personal touch. There's something extra. I am able to do it because you are responding to me. Okay, you have shown your face. You have taken one step towards me. The people who are in the background and I can't see your face, I have a relationship with you and I'm giving you a standard greeting. Greetings to everybody. But then I call the names of some people because these people I'm able to interact with them on a more intimate level. Now see if you can understand a little bit what I'm trying to say. You're always able to develop a relationship better with those who are opening the door to the relationship. I'm not criticizing anybody about showing your picture or not. That's not the point, but I'm just using the illustration because I think it's a good way of understanding what I'm trying to say. These two verses are not superficial. Jesus was not just giving us standard rules like another set of commandments. He's talking about relationship. Look at the heart of these two verses. The key element here is love. The key element is love and relationship. He's trying to give us a clue, brothers and sisters, how to get into the heart of God, how to find a relationship that other people don't have, right? This goes beyond the length of your dress and the kind of food you eat and so on. This has to do with love that takes over your life and makes you want to do everything because of this relationship. When your wife is far away, I know that Brother Joshua's wife is in Guyana and he's in Canada. I know he loves her and I know he calls her and WhatsApps her and they communicate. And it's good to have that two-way communication. But there are certain things, there are certain experiences that build that relationship and make it stronger and more beautiful and more meaningful. He's still longing for the time when he can have a closer interaction with her, personal, face to face. Hold her hand, hug her. That is something far beyond what he's able to do at the moment. Relationships are not intended, true relationships are not intended to be long distance, not for long anyway. After a while, they begin to get tedious and challenging and difficult. If Jesus is saying to you, look here, if you love me, go and keep these rules. If you love me, go and keep these rules. And if you keep these rules and you keep them effectively, I'm going to come and show myself to you. Is that what he's saying? Is it a list of things to do? And if you do them as a reward, I'm going to come and show myself to you. I think this is a wrong understanding, brothers and sisters. This is why I put the three things on the board. Commandments, words, and voice. Which would you rather have and which do you think we have as Christians? Words in a book are living words as we interact with a living person. I can do anything if I have a friend. When my wife is away, it might thoughts of unfaithfulness might float through my head. I might have the temptation to look at other women. When she's there with me, the things that are hard become easy. The things that are hard become easy because the greatest force in the world for changing a person is the presence of somebody who loves you. The presence, not the counsel, not the statements, not the words, the presence of somebody who loves you. This is the greatest force in the world for accomplishing change and for strength in a person. The words of Jesus are the living expression of the living Lord. This is what I'm trying to say, right? Take me a long time to get there. In Isaiah, when God spoke about this experience, you know the verse, but let's read it anyway. God says, when he talks about, in Isaiah, when he talks about the coming new covenant, he says, thine ears shall hear a word behind thee saying, this is the way. Wow. A word behind you instead of statements in a book. This is relationship. Statements in a book is for the world. The word behind you is for me. Any man, any person. Jesus is talking about personal relationship. I'm glad that me and Sister Marcy have the same words to study. But I'm more glad that I have his voice to direct me. I'm glad that when I get up in the morning, he says, this morning I want you to study this passage. When I sit down around my computer to eat my breakfast, he says, go to the table and eat. So I go to the table. I sit down to think, what shall I do? I'm around the computer. I have the newsletter to work on. I have letters to respond to. I have this tape to transcribe. And he says, today, first of all, go and respond to these letters. I like that. I like that kind of relationship. This is what I want. Jesus is talking about an experience where you and him are in such a relationship. You love him so much that you are sensitive to everything he has to say and you're responding. This is what he's talking about. He's not talking about standardized, formal relationship. He's not talking
Say
about
that again, Brother David.
I will, Brother Chris. He's not talking about an experience with an institution called a church. He's talking about you and him. He says, if a man love me, if a man love me, if a woman love me, he will keep my words. He will respond to what I'm saying. And I will be able to do something special in that person's life. This is what Jesus is talking about. He furthermore emphasized it in John chapter 15. Look at what he says. This is something that I had a little difficulty in understanding. He says, abide in me, and I in you. Who is he talking to? One good friend of mine has joined a church. I won't call the name of it. I don't want to publicly identify this person. Most of us probably wouldn't know him, but still. He has joined himself to a church because he believes that this church is the oldest church and that historically God has been directing this church. And this church believes this and this church believes that. And we Christians, we are just usurpers, modern day usurpers. You know, we talk about the Spirit leading us, but the Spirit leads the church. This is a burden I've had on my heart ever since I became a Christian. All the promises of God, I try to ask myself the question. Maybe I don't know why, but I want to know me. I want to know me. I want to know God. How do you relate to me? I mean, when he says in Jeremiah, I have loved you with an everlasting love. Therefore, with loving kindness, I have drawn thee. That was my verse for a long time. Then I looked at it and I saw that he was speaking to Israel. And it kind of dampened my spirit a little bit because the verse is beautiful, but it wasn't speaking to me so much. It was talking to everybody. That is why I go to the Bible and I look for these verses that speak to the individual, because I'm going to be saved as an individual. And it's not salvation. It's not salvation. It's more than that. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Salvation is something I obtained 46 years ago. I obtained that. Like I said, if that is what I was after, I have no motivation to be good anymore. I have no motivation to continue to seek anymore. Why seek when you have obtained? But look here. The joy of it, brothers and sisters, the true joy of salvation is not heaven. It's not eternal life. It's not salvation. It is Jesus Christ. The joy of Christianity, the meaning of Christianity is Jesus Christ. And Christians say it, but they don't know what they're talking about because Jesus is a person. He's a person. And if you don't have the person, you don't have Jesus. Many people have a relationship with the words of Jesus. They have a relationship with the teachings of Jesus. They have a relationship with the statements of Jesus. They don't have a relationship with the person. And my heart burns me for the person, and so does the heart of every Christian who can hear my voice. God knows, brothers and sisters, God knows. We were made for Him. We were made for God. Why do you think He created us? What do you think we were created for? To eat fruit from the trees and walk around and enjoy the planet? That is the fringe benefits. We were made for God. And like the I think it's in the Westminster Confession, it says, we were made for Him, and our hearts are restless till they find rest in Him. When you find Christians who are struggling and they are ill at ease and they are uncomfortable and they are depressed, you know what? They have found the words of Christ. They have found the religion of Christ, but they have not found Christ. Trust me. The psalmist could say, in thy presence is fullness of joy. Fullness of joy. At thy right hand are pleasures forevermore. Jesus tells us, abide in me. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself except it abide in the vine, no more can ye except ye abide in me. He tells us the secret of holy living. It is because we are with Him. When we are with Him, do you think it matters if you have to make any sacrifice? Do you think it matters? What does He say? A little further down, look at what He says. Verse 10, if you keep my commandments, and I'm going to insert the word, if you listen to my voice, you shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in His love. So, hear what He says? These things have I spoken unto you, that my joy might remain in you. Praise God. And that your joy might be full. Praise God. This is a way to happiness and contentment, brothers and sisters. My joy. I'm telling you this. Jesus is saying, I'm giving you the secret. I'm giving you a formula so you can know how to be happy. I'm giving you a formula so you can know what Christianity means, what is the true focus of Christianity. I want you to be happy, and this is the secret of joy. My words remain in you. You shall abide in my love. And what He's talking about. And you see, if you think about it, it is so simple and it works so beautifully. All right. I have been doing what I can to focus on this truth and to live by this truth. And you know what I've found out? I think I see what Jesus is saying. Maybe I'm ahead of myself. Let me go down a little bit more. Let me come down to something that He says. Let me go back to that verse in chapter 14. I'll come to the point I was going to make. I'll come to it in a little while. Let me go back to this verse in verse 21. Jesus says, he that loveth me shall be loved of my Father. Just a minute. Let me go back to here and just remind ourselves of what He's talking about. Back to this screen. Which of these do you think He means? He that loves me shall be loved by my Father. Look at these two definitions of love. Which one of these is Jesus talking about? Is it number one? Was there ever any time in the existence of the God of heaven when he did not have selfless concern for others? Is there any time? Which person on this earth does God not have selfless concern for? Not even Hitler, not even Bill Gates, or Dr. Fauci, or any of these people. God has selfless concern for these people. So we must be looking at the second definition. When Jesus says, my Father will love him, he's talking about definition number two. My Father will desire that person. My Father will want to be with that person. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see what Jesus is saying? He's saying that if you love him and you are listening to his voice, let's give it the right definition. If you are listening to his voice, he says, then the consequence will be that God will want to be with that person. God will desire to be with that person, and God will come and make his home with that person. In Jamaica, they have a saying. It goes like this. I think it's a Jamaican saying. It says, the humble calf sucks the most milk. The humble calf sucks the most milk. It's a Jamaican saying, I believe. But you know, you can, I had 4 children, and I have a few grandchildren, but you can look into your own life, and you know something. You love all your children. Isn't that right? My parents had 10. But you know what? Some of the children let the parents into their lives. Some of the children, they enter into a kind of relationship with their parent that others, they are not allowed to have with others. Let me give you an example, right? I have 2 boys and 2 girls. My relationship with each one is special. My second son, he's good with his hands. He can fix things better than any of my other children. He can fix things. He's good with computers and so on. He is also able to draw a little bit like my other son, Daniel, is hopeless at things like that. Not very practical, and he's not very good at the computer at all. But he has his gifts in terms of being affectionate, in terms of his understanding of things, of the word and so on. God has blessed him. He's very deep. My daughter, Annalie, my last daughter, you know what I always said? I always said she was my best son. I always said until today that Annalie was my best son. You know why? Anytime I went out to work in the yard, if I was planting yam, if I was cutting the grass, if I was weeding, she was always beside me. She always took her little hoe or whatever, and she was there. She was right beside me all the time. If I wanted some help, I would say, Daniel and Dave, can you come? And they would come. But Annalie, you don't need to ask her. She's there beside me. She was a little pest when she was a baby. I had to run and hide from her. She comes and she questions, and I'm trying to work and she's questioning me. Sometimes I'd run and hide. And then she would come looking for me. She was always around my feet. And maybe that's one of the reasons why her little son, Cade, now, they kind of having a similar kind of relationship. But the point I'm making is, everyone you have a different relationship with, but it depends on how they let you into their lives. Now, God is saying the humble calf sucks the most milk, right? God is saying, if you will let me in your life, how do you let me in your life? You respond to me. You respond to me. You open up to me, right? You're hearing my voice. Even when you're brushing your teeth, you're hearing, he's saying, don't brush it this way, brush it this way. You're listening to him. Don't you see that this is the manifestation of the Lord in your life? This is how he manifests himself. Because you have let him into your life, because you have determined, look here, I'm not putting on this shirt because my Lord says I don't want it on. Wow, he came 10 steps closer to you. You begin to feel him. You go out in the shirt and somebody says, I like that shirt. And you hear his voice and you see him saying, you know I said this to you. He begins to fill your life because you're shaving, and he's shaving with you. And So in everything in your life, you have brought him into your life. You're reading a book and you're reading it because he chose this for you to read. And so you're reading with him, and so you're listening for his voice. He's everywhere around you. And he's manifested in your life because you have opened the door for him to come into your life. You're
My
not worried
brother.
about,
Amen.
you're not worried about, oh, I would like my dress to be a little shorter, or I'd like my dress to be a little longer. Oh, or did I eat this today, or did I eat that today? You are on a higher level. You're listening to the voice of your Lord. And if he says, David, this is not for us today, you have no question. Look, you have got the Lord. What do you care about any of these things? Brothers and sisters, I've learned that the goal in life is the journey. The goal is the journey. Let me explain what I mean. Most of us as human beings, we are oriented towards success. We want to succeed, all right? You're thinking of the end of the journey. The end of the journey is heaven. The end of the journey is eternal life. The end of the journey is when I am changed. You know what? If that is your goal, you will never reach the end of the journey. You will die without reaching it unless Jesus comes in your lifetime then. But you will be constantly under pressure because you never ever obtain the end of the journey. And suppose what you want from the Lord is success in life, or suppose what you want is a life of stainless sinlessness. Suppose these are your goals. You're after the Lord's goods. You're after what he can give you, and your motive is wrong, and you will be frustrated. But what if your goal is the Lord? What if your goal is the Lord? When have you reached the end of the journey? The journey is the destination. When I'm with him, I've reached my goal. Don't you see the beauty of it, brothers and sisters? Don't you see the beauty of it? The journey is the destination. The goal is himself. And when I have him, I've reached the end of the journey. So look here. I think I mentioned it to you. Do you think it matters? I went to fix my bike. Okay, the tire punctured and it's hard to fix. It's not like the little small bikes when I could just pull off the tire. I pulled it down. I have to take off the tire off the bike. I know it's a big job because the tire is tough. It's a big, thick tire. The tools I have, it's very difficult. So I take the car out the garage. I take off the wheel off the bike and I put it on the ground. And I'm going to have a hard time today. I said, Lord, you and me with this tire. Please bless me in this. Okay. So I pull off the wheel. It takes me at least an hour. I get off the tire. Then I discover there's supposed to be a hole in the tube. I search. I cannot find any hole. I don't know what to do. Eventually, after hard work, I put back up the tire. I put it on. It's still leaking. In the old days, I'm giving away that bike. When my brother Tony was alive, he would always come and help me. I could never stand the stress of working on old iron. It wasn't my thing. You know what I said? Lord, I don't care. You and I were on the job. I was at the end of the journey. Failure doesn't matter. There's no failure with you. Okay, you want me to pull down the tire twice? I'm going to pull it down twice. I don't care. The journey, the end is not the goal. The destination is the journey. What was my reward that day was to sit down around a tire for 2 hours with my Jesus. What else is there that is better in life? Look here, and if he says do it 10 times more, I'm going to do it 10 times more because the tire is not the issue. The issue is the presence of the Lord with me. And if Jesus says the place I want you to be today is fixing a tire, I'm going to fix that tire. When you look at life this way, brothers and sisters, there's no failure, okay? You have your rent coming up at month end, okay? And you don't have the money for the rent. Whose business is that? Your business is Jesus. You and him are sitting down. You don't care. Your life is his life. What are you going to do? Stress and fret out about the money? No. You rest in the Lord and you just find out from him this moment, what is your instruction, my Lord? He says, go cut grass. Lord, I don't have any money for my rent. Jesus says, that's not your business. You and I are on this journey, and your business is to keep my words. And my business is to manifest myself to you. And so his presence is in your life. You feel that presence, you experience that presence. This is what Jesus is saying, brothers and sisters. And when you think of somebody trying to respond by keeping a set of rules, that is so far less than what Jesus is saying. My time is up, so I think I better stop here. And I hope everybody has understood the point I'm trying to make.